First up would be an approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any changes or additions to the March 14th minutes that haven't already been given to staff?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. We have no items on our consent agenda or our administrative session tonight, so we just have our legislative items, of which there are 3, and we will have a public hearing for each one individually. The first item is Springville Community Development requests amendments to Springville Code for for residential short-term rentals to establish requirements for sleeping rooms for building code. And we have a presentation tonight.
So I'm gonna win it because I didn't bring all my stuff.
Hi.
Hi guys, how are you?
Hi.
I've been here for a while. I miss you.
You're too famous now.
I know. So okay, short-term rentals. I don't know how familiar you are. Let me give you just a little bit of background. In our code, short-term rentals allow for homeowners to rent a portion of their home. It could be an entire basement, or it could be just a single room. It can be whatever, as long as it is, they still have to be on the premises for 30 days or less. So those are your typical Airbnb, Vrbo type of situations. Our code requires them to get a license to operate a short-term rental, and it was brought to our attention from our chief building official that many of the short-term rentals are in older homes that may not be meeting current residential building code in regards to egress and fire alarm, or excuse me, smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. And so there was the concern for health and life and safety in those situations. This simply will allow for the building inspectors and to make that a requirement through our ordinance for those things to be present when someone gets a short-term rental, when someone applies for a short-term rental. In the newer homes, not a big deal, they meet code. But some of the older homes that that may be utilized for that, and there's not a lot, but if they are there, we just want to make sure that the people staying in their homes are as safe as we would have in staying in one of the newer homes. And we feel it will also be a protection for those who are doing short-term rentals, as to be able to, have a certain level of safety for the people who are staying there. So that is what we'll be doing with this ordinance.
Okay. Are there any questions? So can you talk about what the requirements for egress would be?
Just in the, and I'm not as familiar with the building code, so Josh may have to answer this. It requires a window that someone can exit the room from, and I don't know. Are there any other stipulations for egress other than having a window?
Primarily it's related to the configuration of the window, the sill height, the maximum openable or minimum openable area, and then those other specific requirements regarding smoke detector and carbon monoxide.
So we're probably mostly looking at older basements that were built with windows that are about the size of what you normally see in a bathroom.
That or houses
situation.
like my 1990 house, which has, which when we bought it had 2 smoke detectors in it, one upstairs and one downstairs. We particularly want to ensure that when people are in a home they're unfamiliar with, that where they may not, have that egress path totally mapped out, that they have all of the warning and other safety measures in place that the International Residential Code would typically require for new construction. We just want to get in the code to make sure that we can get an inspector in there before we issue that license and make sure that everything's in compliance.
And not only for the people who are staying there, but I know that, sometimes Airbnb people are not always the most respectful. And so it also gives the homeowner an element of safety by having a smoke detector where that individual is staying that will alert the rest of the family if by some chance the temporary tenant decides to smoke and falls asleep, or simple things like that. It just provides a level of safety for everyone involved in the home to make sure that they're protected.
Okay.
That's about it. All right. That may have been the easiest one I've done with you guys.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion for the public hearing?
So moved.
And a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the public hearing for this item is now open. If you would like to address the commission, you may come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Seeing no one coming forward, I would recommend that we close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing for item number 1 is now closed. Any discussion among commissioners for this item? Okay. And if no discussion or questions, do we have a motion?
I'll move to amend the residential short-term resident code to require each sleeping room and the residence in which it is situated to comply with minimum standards of life safety.
Okay.
Seconded?
Do we need to include in that motion any of the, like the code section or any other specifics, or is that good enough?
The specific code section.
Yeah, that motion's fine.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 2, Springville Community Development requests amendments to Springville Code 11-4-708, Main Street South Gateway Building Height. And we have Director Yost.
Thanks for reading that item in, Chair and Commissioners. There are essentially 2 parts to this proposed amendment. The first is related to the interior and total building height for the maximum building height that's primarily applied in the mixed-use buildings that are closer to Main Street but still set back off of Main Street according to the step-back standards. This amendment would propose to reduce the upper story floor to ceiling height minimum from 9 feet to 8 feet 8. This helps accomplish the first element of making a 4-story building more buildable within the 45-foot height limit, where we have a 14-foot clear in the first floor and then 3 9-foot clears. That doesn't leave you a lot of room for 3 floors and a roof. The applicant or the development group that we're working with when the code was drafted had indicated they would be able to work with that. I don't know that they had actually studied that fully, but the current group has evaluated that and determined that they really can't fit all those floor to ceiling heights and structure within that 45-foot maximum to the top of the roof deck. The amendment would also increase the maximum height of the roof deck from 45 feet to 47.5 feet. So we'd take care of some of this inside the building by reducing those upper floor heights, and some of it outside of the building by raising the roof deck. What this doesn't do is it does not change the maximum parapet height of 53 feet. So from the exterior of the building, or from the street, from the courtyard, you won't actually be able to see the difference. It won't be visible to the exterior of the building.
And you're talking about minimum or maximum?
Maximum. So the
The
Right.
max is,
So the maximum height of any building to the top of the parapet is 53, because previously the parapet height was allowed to be 8 feet above. But now it's 8 feet above whatever the height is for that location. So sometimes it's 2 stories, sometimes it's 3, and some other locations it's 4. So we just put a caveat in the code to say that in no case shall it extend beyond 53 feet. So we don't go 45.5 plus 8. That it stays at 45 plus 8. So the roof deck moves, but the parapet stays the same. And everyone knows what parapet is. I just realized sometimes that, okay. We're all all experienced here. The second amendment is related to the townhomes. primarily, and that is to decrease the ground floor minimum floor ceiling height, or floor to ceiling height from 10 feet to 8 feet 9. This 10-foot requirement led to kind of an unintended consequence that made it harder for townhomes to employ stoops and to raise that first floor elevation and still fit in under the maximum building height. So what we're proposing is that 15-inch decrease only in the cases where it's a townhome, and this is for first floor residential minimum floor to ceiling height, and only for townhomes where the finished first floor elevation is at least 18 inches above the adjacent sidewalk. So if you want to do a stoop or 3 steps up to the porch, then you can do that, and by getting yourself some headroom in the overall building section by reducing that overall height and that first floor height.
Do we want to encourage stoops?
I would like to, generally, yes. There's a lot of traditional townhomes that aren't, especially like lane homes or muse homes, but a lot of what we think of, I think even if you look at the Prime Minister's office that's in the townhome on Downing Street has maybe a 1 step, but a lot of what we consider here to be classic townhomes do have somewhat of a stoop, or even the brownstone configuration, which is almost a half story up and then half story down.
Okay.
So this provides the ability to do that.
And the stoop is the place right in front of the front door that's.
Yeah, it's the
Kind of
porch.
like a tiny porch.
Yeah, I mean, they're actually pretty substantial in the designs we have here.
Okay.
But it could be interchangeably called a porch. There's some provisions in the design standards in the code that require using a certain number of strategies to address the relationship between the street and the building, and one of those is to mediate between that public and private space with a change in height. It also serves to put people that are sitting on the front porch at more of an equal height with somebody that's walking by, so it actually feels more congenial or more sociable for conversation, where you don't feel like someone's on the sidewalk looking down at you. It brings you to about the same level by bringing you up 1.5 feet. So those are all things that we want to at least provide an opportunity for the designers to employ here. It does not affect the overall maximum height of any of the buildings. They all stay the same. It just allows that first floor to be a little shorter in terms of floor to ceiling height if you raise the finished floor elevation of the first floor.
So I'm going to ask this out of ignorance. What is the purpose of having the minimum residential height of 10 feet in the first place?
Generally, so that where we have first floor residential on other streets, it doesn't get overly short and negatively impact the proportions of the building. I could find some images, but a lot of times when we have residential first floors, they're at 8 feet and the building doesn't look right adjacent from the street from an aesthetic perspective because the floor is too short. And any horizontal projections like an awning or a porch just look short and stunted compared to the ground.
But the 9 inches will make a difference from the 8 foot?
No, yes, it allows them to push the.
By 9 inches, yeah, but it's.
No, it allows them to actually push it up 1.5 feet because they have a bit of. It's the minimum they would need. The design as currently proposed has some additional head height above the roof, the level of the roof of the ceiling pairing of the 3rd floor and the roof truss. So there's actually a little bit of cripple wall or wall between the ceiling of the 3rd floor and where the plate where the roof trusses sit, so they can make up the rest of that other 9 inches there. So we're allowing them to make.
We're just spreading it to other areas.
Right, but so we're allowing them to make that minimum decrease in the first floor if they're willing to bring the first floor finished elevation up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a 1-to-1. So the recommended motion here is simply to approve our requested developments to the code. And I actually had one note, just so doesn't hurt to say it. In the code as I presented to you in the in the staff report, It was actually written for townhomes where the finished floor elevation is at least 18 inches above the adjacent sidewalk, and I omitted the word first, just for clarity. It should be there, but that doesn't substantially impact the proposal. I just wanted to mention that. That's all I have on this.
Okay. Any questions before we move? Okay, thank you. All right, do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
No, like a second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. The public hearing for item number 2 is now open. If anyone would like to come address the commission, you're welcome to come up to the microphone and state your name and address.
Not seeing anyone approaching the podium, I move to close the public hearing.
Okay, motion and second.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any discussion or questions on this item? Okay, or do we have a motion?
I'll move to recommend approval of the Springville Community Developments Department, Community Developments request to amend the Springville Code 114708 Main Street South Gateway Building Height.
Okay, do we have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We now move to item number 3, which is Springville Community Development requests the office zone map to be amended from the Community Commercial or CC zone to the Main Street South Gateway zone or the MSSG zone for parcels generally located along Main Street from 400 South to 800 South, including a number of parcels which we will leave to the record to acknowledge. Do we have a presentation from Director Yost?
Thank you. This is the boundary of the proposed zone map amendment. I will note that in the parcel list, we did inadvertently leave out this second home south of 500 South. So we'll make sure that gets noticed when we move further with this process. But overall, it takes in all of the community commercial zoned or CC zoned property south of 4th, all the way to 8th South on the east and west side of Main Street, except for the recently developed commercial mixed-use product at Fox Ridge on the west side. And it'll become evident through the presentation why we didn't include that. So right now we have reframing downtown in progress. That's our planning process for Main Street from 8th South to 4th North, the block in either direction that we've talked about and some of you have attended stakeholder meetings and open houses for. We're about coming into a year on that process and getting close to having a draft plan. Some of the preliminary recommendations include making downtown a vibrant cultural, commercial, and residential destination. Some of those strategies to accomplish that are maintaining and expanding an intact traditional downtown core, leaning into our identity as the arts city, and making downtown a place to come to, not just through. We have a lot of through, and we need more reason to stop and stay. The rationale for proposing this amendment this time is that it provides an opportunity for the Planning Commission, the City Council, and staff to fully consider the adoption and implementation of this plan without pressure from new development prior to the implementation of the plan. We've initiated pending ordinance and feel that the Main Street Gateway, out of all the zones we have on the books, best reflects the intent of the draft recommendations out of the reframing downtown plan. And also acknowledge that it will need to be updated with some additional provisions and regulations to specifically address the circumstances in this area, primarily related to mid-block transitions between zones, which the Main Street South Gateway zone as written doesn't have a particularly good way of dealing with. There are multiple redevelopment opportunities in the area right now, and so we wanted to provide time to do advanced planning and get the proper zoning on the books so that we achieve the desired outcome. Particularly because we've had some previous missed opportunities in this corridor, as we've talked about, or as I talked about in the staff report. well, Fox Ridge delivers a great residential product downtown, and it really helps bolster our downtown population, our vibrancy. It definitely is a product that could have been improved and could have been better, especially in terms of its integration into the neighborhood, its design, and its overall site design. It's not a bad project, but it definitely left a lot on the table in terms of pursuing design excellence. Also, the Housing Authority project at 451 South Main also provides good housing, but missed the opportunity to reinforce the urban design character of the downtown core by bringing the building to the street and putting the parking in back and holding that street edge and really signaling the transition into our downtown core that we'd like to do in this area. The general plan, the current general plan has some narrative talking about different commercial corridors in the city, and regarding the South Main Street plan and actually the North Main Street area as well. It says that these two corridors are similar to the types of uses found on South State Street in Salt Lake County. That's kind of where I grew up, and so I'm really familiar with how marginal it is. There's probably, the analog here in Utah County is probably a lot of State Street and Orem. And the general plan considered, 12 years ago that these areas will probably face similar challenges to the areas like Orem Main Street or Orem State Street and Salt Lake County State Street, in terms of the need to provide opportunities for redevelopment and mixed-use development to better take advantage of the properties located in that area, especially as they age and the uses become more marginal and the buildings need redevelopment. In terms of the historic town center, it states that the town center is very walkable, and while the primary users are local, the area has great potential to become more of a destination shopping and dining experience because of the character of the area and the proximity to the Springville Museum of Art. And it also talks about consideration of higher density housing and main floor commercial. The reframing downtown plan really proposes to extend this downtown core south of 4th and to try to bridge the gap across south, as this is really an area where there's a lot of opportunity for redevelopment, and extending that character and that sense of downtown farther south into those existing commercial areas. So in order to preserve our ability to accomplish that, that's why we've initiated this pending ordinance, so that we can have the opportunity to decide what we really want here and then make sure we put the right regulations in place. We'd like to do that before additional development occurs on some of these parcels, some being vacant that are kind of ripe for redevelopment. The pending ordinance, as we've dealt with before, I think many of you were on the commission when we previously instigated a pending ordinance. It prevents development applications from being approved under the current zone until either the council acts on the pending ordinance or 6 months have elapsed from the time that we noticed this, so 2 Fridays ago. We are aware that there are some development proposals currently being pursued, and that the pending ordinance prevents these proposals from advancing. And while we realize and understand that it's a significant impact to individual property and business owners, that we really need to balance that against Planning Commission and the City Council's opportunity to consider really what we want this future to be. I've said it a number of times, but that's really why we initiated at this point. In terms of existing uses, both existing buildings and existing uses on the ground, the ordinance would not change any of those or require any of those to cease operation or buildings to change. They would all become, in so much that there were nonconformities there, they would become legal nonconforming uses, or what's commonly referred to as grandfathered uses. So none of the existing businesses would be impacted. None of the existing buildings would be required to be modified or changed or altered in any way. It would only impact new businesses locating into the area, new types of business uses, and any new development or redevelopment of the property.
As long as those businesses stay operating and don't have a gap of, like a year?
Correct.
Is that right?
Abandonment of a non-conforming use requires at least a year of abandonment. As we analyze this as staff, we realize that there's a lot of consideration that can be given to weighing the interests that we have in front of us here between private property owners and development interests. against the city's broad desire to put in place the right plan for this area, and feel that this, almost that political or more balancing part of the process should generally be left to the city council, and that you as the planning commission, your mandate as a commission is more to focus on the planning aspects and the pluses and minuses relating to what's proposed. And in this case, they include analyzing the best practices for downtown development, the recommendations in the general plan, and these preliminary recommendations that we've reviewed from the framing downtown process. And then objective evaluation, looking at those recommendations and the goals of the general plan and determining whether or not the zone we've proposed is likely to successfully implement and achieve the results that we want to achieve in the area. This will provide the city council with a recommendation based on technical analysis and your understanding of current planning and your vision for the future of the city. And then they can weigh that recommendation against the interests of the individual property owners. And you're likely to hear from some of those property owners tonight, and I invite you to consider their proposals, their positions, and the alternatives or requests that they make, and provide feedback on those. In general, our overall goal tonight is to just initiate this discussion, and our recommended motion for you is to continue the request so that we can have further discussion. We're planning to take this to council work meeting next week to get their perspective on how to deal with some of the existing development proposals in the area, and kind of that overall balance of city interest versus property owner interest, and then we'll have a more clear path to formulate the specific recommendation as we come back to the Planning Commission. So we're really here for discussion and looking for a motion for continuance.
Why are the multi-use on the western side of the street not included?
Because they're brand new and they're not going to change.
But even though this doesn't affect any existing locations, we're not going to include it?
I didn't think it was necessary, with them being brand new construction and not likely to redevelop, or especially them being condos. It's very likely that they'll never change, especially as the residential units are individually condominiumized separately from the commercial space.
So to tag along with that question, is there any downside to just including it?
There's not, no.
I'm wondering if maybe we should just include it so that we're consistent all the way across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good consideration. I think we were just trying to be narrow, and it probably wasn't necessary with those pieces because it wouldn't impact them either way, and we'd have
It shouldn't,
we'd
yeah.
have a much tidier zoning map.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Do we have a motion for the public hearing?
Move to open the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the public hearing for item number 3 is now open. As you heard from our director, there is a possibility of the item being continued, but we will still hold a public hearing, and we welcome any comments that are here on this matter, and it would still be something that would be considered as part of this going forward. So if anyone would like to address the commission, you can come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please.
How we doing? My name is Brandon Lundeen. I'm with Diversified Design Service. I'm here on behalf of Daniel Arce and the Art City Auto Body Shop. Just a little background. Daniel's Art City Body Shop is in this zone down there currently. We've been working with him for the last 3-4 months, and he's been working even longer to purchase a piece of property to the south of him. He's come into town, he's invested, he's remodeled that building, has a really nice looking place down there, holds car shows. He's a great asset to the public. fast forwarding, like I said, we've been working on initial designs for him, trying to get him costs to build a new building to expand his business. Well, lo and behold, he closed on this piece of property March 31st. 2 hours later after that, he got an email from Mr. Yost that basically stated, this is what we're looking at doing at this area. We have some concerns. So he graciously met with us last Tuesday. We went through the proposed ordinance, and the problem we have is his business is a body shop. What we're proposing to do next to it is like an automotive technical center, with vehicles being as high-tech and stuff we have now. It's not just about auto body anymore. To even change a windshield, you have to have calibrations done to the windshield. You've got sensors all over the cars. He's looking to develop a business where he can bring them in, take care of the alignments, take care of the sensors. It's a clean business. It's not a dirty business, and furnish that market that's just going to grow here. So when I looked at it, and asked Mr. Yost about the non-automotive, it just basically had a blanket right over non-automotive, and I don't feel that's a fair assessment with the technology and things that are happening now. This isn't based basically on exchange of parts, hammering and dolling and painting. That's done at the existing building there. This is a tech center. So I sat down over the weekend and sketched out. Mr. Yost sent me the proposal of what the architectural looks at it. So I put something together to show what this could possibly look like. I don't know if you were able to bring it up.
If you task switch to it.
What's that?
Just hit Alt Tab and it'll task switch you back to it.
That's what you were putting up.
Okay, so we took the building, we had it more like, we had it about 30 feet off the city, off Main Street, off the sidewalk. I've now taken and moved the building closer to this Main Street like the ordinance asked for, moved our parking to the back. I believe the ordinance said 10% of landscape. We have just over 10% for this project. We have direct access right off of the sidewalk that would go along Main Street there. The layout for the building, oops. How do I scroll to another?
Arrow down or use the mouse.
Okay. The floor plan still works for Mr. Arce. As you can see, we have some overhead doors that would now be on the north side of the building. We would have his reception area where vehicles are checked in. With the new vehicles, the way they came in, they do what's called blueprinting of them, where they basically go over the whole car and find out what it needs to have done to get it back in alignment, so all the bells and whistles work on these newer cars. He would have some offices and some part storage above. And this is what I came with for the design. We're trying to fit into the theme you guys have with the brick, awnings, classical looking lights, cornices, changes in elevation along the front. So we can make this building comply. I think the basic thing I'm trying to ask you guys is don't throw a blanket over automotive and say no automotive. I would look over and say, if it's not permitted use, which I can understand, make it a conditional use. That if an automotive type business like Mr. Arcee's looking to do wants to come in and comply with the architectural standards of that area, and it doesn't look like there's a body shop one there, I don't know why they wouldn't be allowed to use it. Mr. Arcee is basically mortgaged everything he has to buy this piece of property, and if this doesn't go through as at least a permitted use or a conditional type use, he now has a piece of property that he can't use for his business. It becomes worthless to him, for lack of a better term. So I'm sure Daniel will want to talk to you about this, but we can make it work. We can make it work in this zone, and I think we can make it comply with you guys' architectural standards we're looking for. So
It's just the use that's the issue.
correct. But I think a blanket's been thrown out all automotive. I mean, that's a pretty broad blanket. That's be from a wrecking yard to a car dealership to something like we're talking that's a higher end tech center. There's not going to be oil leaking. There's not going to be engines out on the outside. There's not going to be dilapidated vehicles. They're going to come in. Mr. Arcee will be allowed to bring other vehicles from other body shops, because this is kind of a specialized deal they do with these sensor resets and all the calibrations that are required. So he'll have a specialized business. It'll look great. He'll have a great parking lot. He's throwing on different car shows, which, I mean, the name of the business is Art City. He's embracing that Art City thing. This is his livelihood and where he's chose to do business. And I just hope you guys can look at that and say, let's just not throw a blanket over one type of business. I mean, it's not auto wrecking. This is something completely different.
Yeah. So that north elevation, those are the garage entrances there?
Correct. It'd be all glass. We'd have where our entrance doors would have normally been man doors. We've done kind of storefronts, so it looks like it's individual businesses. We've put windows above that are basically for natural light along that side, but they have an architectural feel I believe you guys are looking for. So
Is this the part of the map we're talking about?
Correct.
To make sure it's
Correct.
Yeah, where the rocket was, right?
Still is.
So it is, yeah.
Yeah, well, we got to find a way to implement it. That's a part of history of the city. It's kind of an odd part of history, but it's a part of history. And
Yeah.
It's taken and redone. It looks really nice.
Yeah, it does.
So
I was happy to see it there.
anyway, I'm just hoping as this progresses, I mean, the 6-month time started on the exact date that he purchased the property and closed on it. I'm just hoping that that item can be looked at closely as it goes forward with the city council and whatnot, and just don't throw a complete blanket over automotive, because that will destroy this whole project for him. He's made a big investment, wants it to be right, so he's willing to do what it takes.
There's no second floor, right?
No, there is in the front. There will be a second floor there.
Okay, what's up there?
Offices, some calibration equipment and whatnot on the top. Need a little more equipment storage.
Okay.
If we go back to one of those other, the one that kind of, yeah, this one.
Yeah, he'd have training rooms, because this is a pretty technical deal. There'd be a training room up there. Like I said, some equipment storage and whatnot, and then his office. Then they got the 2 blueprinting rooms downstairs, storage area, restrooms, and then the front desk.
So the upper floor is just over the side
Yeah,
of
it's
Main
just over
Street.
that front 25 feet.
And then the rest of it is just two-story open.
2-story open.
Yeah.
Correct.
Any other questions for? I'm sorry, I forgot your name. What's your name?
Brandon.
Brandon?
With Diversified Design.
Great. Any other questions for Brandon?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Daniel RC. And so, sorry, I've never done this before. I'm super nervous.
Well, state your address for.
Oh, address is 587 South Main Street, or my home address. I'm here in Springville too. So, is that the one you want, or just
Yep.
Home, right, Heather?
That's the one she
six-
wants.
Yeah, home
687
address.
South, 2080 East, Springville, Utah. Yeah, so this kind of came in a shock to me. I've been working with planning commission, or with or what do you,
Community
Josh.
development.
Josh. Josh and his team, since June of last year. We presented some site plans of what we wanted to do, and we asked them, like, is it allowed to build something like this and under the zoning CC? And they basically said yes, and they sent us back revisions on, these are the revisions that you need to make this building compliant with our zoning. So we redid our site plan and moved our building per the setbacks and everything. So since then, I've pretty much gone full steam ahead. I sold a bunch of my real estate, which I worked really hard for. I hired Brandon, the architect. I hired Barco Construction, and I paid them a lot of money. And I bought the property, which, you know, to be quite frank, I way overpaid than what it's worth. Like, if I were to try to sell it today, I wouldn't be able to sell it for what I paid for it. So this was all done because we were told yes last year, and I closed on the property March 31st, so just barely. And then that same day is when I got this email, like, that they're wanting to change the zoning. So for me, I've had a lot of sleepless nights, and I'm just terrified because I got my life savings right here. You know, this is a kind of something that I've been working really hard for, you know. So I'm not sure what to do. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. At this point, I don't know what we can do. If there's a way to grant us permission to move forward under the CC's zoning, instead of having to wait 6 months to make a decision about this new zoning change, but this is, I can't really wait that long because I've already got the loan through Central Bank. I've been working with with the Packard family there, trying to get everything squared away. We got SBA, we got the commercial loan all done. So we're just about ready to break ground. We were just waiting on final engineering plans to be able to submit to the city to get everything approved. So yeah, we're knee deep into this project, and yeah, so I don't know what we can do at this point.
I'm not sure, maybe I missed, but did you describe what the business is that you're proposing to put there?
Is this
Yeah.
your business? Is this-
What?
is
The
this
architect,
So
specific?
the
this is-
designers.
Yes.
This is the same building, the
This is
same.
the owner.
So,
I got the same.
sorry, I'm the owner of Art City Auto Body, and this will be our sister company. It's just to be clear, just to clarify, our body shop is good right where it's at. We have our paint booth, we have our repair center there. That's where the cars get fixed when they get in a collision. This new building doesn't have anything to do with that. It's a company that can service the body shop, because when you get in an accident, a lot of times you have to replace radars, you have to replace cameras, you have to replace sensors. The cars in today's world are just so technologically advanced that you can't just throw them on the car and then put them on the road, because that would make them unsafe. You have to actually calibrate them. You have to tell the camera, hey, we put a new windshield on your car. You have to tell the camera or the radar, hey, we got a new bumper on your car. So these computers, you need to communicate with them and talk to them and tell them, like, hey, we have new components on the car. We need to calibrate it. And part of that is getting the alignments done. Part of that is getting the proper equipment, so scan tools. You have to put targets out, a certain distance from the car to mimic another vehicle in front of you. And it's just a complicated process. And so right now, I'm sending all of my cars out to a neighboring town. We'd rather keep that in Springville if we could. But right now I have to send them out, to a place in Orem that does all the calibrations. But I'd like to service our own vehicles along with other body shops in neighboring towns, can bring their vehicles there. Not only that, but we can also service the general public with those types of vehicle repairs. So anytime you have a windshield replaced, you need to get it calibrated. Most windshield companies don't calibrate your sensors. So they tell you need to, but they don't do it. So that's what this proposed building is for. Sorry, that was a long answer to your question.
So how many such, what did you call it, auto tech center? Auto tech center, how many are there around here other than this proposed?
There aren't very many. There's one in Orem and one in Salt Lake. So those are the two main ones. And then there's a lot of small ones that aren't really qualified to do it. In fact, most dealerships aren't qualified to do it.
Yeah.
Because you need a certain amount of space. You need a 50 feet front to back and 30 feet side to side. And these dealerships are doing them inside of one bay. So they're not calibrating them properly. So my friend in Orem who's doing them, he gets a lot of work from dealerships because they don't have the proper space or equipment to do these in.
Good strategy.
Yeah.
With the recommendation to continue this, so to give time to, is that a concern for you? Is it the amount of time that it would be that is the concern?
Yeah,
Or-
so the proposed new zoning, it sounds to me like they have a 6-month,
Like a moratorium?
yeah, so,
Maximum.
okay, 6-month maximum, hopefully sooner, but I really can't wait 6 months
Yeah.
because I've got, my builders got us scheduled, we've got a lot of the building materials ordered. I've got the loan with Central Bank that I'll be paying on, and
think you should talk to the
construction. What's that?
I think you should talk to the mayor about that.
Construction loans can only last for so long, from what I'm understanding. It is how, I think they were, I don't remember how much, but I don't want that time to lapse either, because yeah, the clock is ticking.
And Josh, with this continuance, are you thinking a few weeks, or like what kind of a time frame, or is your department thinking?
I think we'll know more after we have a work session with the council next week and get their feeling on the direction they'd like to propose. They may just say, no, we're not interested in this. Don't move forward. They may say, yeah. And they may say, accommodate this use through some mechanism. They may say, study it further. We'd like more information. But if we get, some clear direction in one way or the other next week, I think we'd be ready to bring back something for action in May.
Again, to go along with her question, if the decision, was made in 2 weeks or however long, can there be an exception to the rule? In other words, continue with the decision of putting a moratorium on this, but then saying excluding this property.
We'd have to act to not rezone on these properties, but it is we've done that before when we did the pending ordinance on the freeway commercial, the highway commercial to regional commercial.
Yep.
There's ways to accomplish that. Yes.
Josh, do we have many other properties that are in this that have just purchased, ready to go to build something? Like,
I haven't received any other comments in that regard, and I've talked to a number of property owners. Most were simply concerned that what they're doing right now they can continue to do, and that those uses would be non-conforming into the future, and they could maintain those. I haven't heard any other. I mean, there is another property owner that is generally interested in redeveloping their property and has been participating in the reframing downtown process, but haven't come with a specific proposal with what they're wanting to do. But there are others that we've been in discussion with, but nobody in this
And I would also
exact
think
position.
that during our public hearing, many of those people hopefully would be here and come forward, just like Mr. Daniel, I forgot your last name.
Arce.
Arce, yeah, Mr. Arce did.
So the soonest that it would be back to the planning commission would be in 4 weeks.
Most likely. But just to help you understand the process better, if we receive direction from the council and the planning commission concurs that they'd like to somehow provide an opportunity for this project to move forward and in compliance with all the provisions of the zone, other than perhaps the specific use prohibition, then the applicant would be able to make an application under the proposed or the pending ordinance, pending the adoption of that ordinance to save time. That would be obviously some degree of risk until it's actually adopted by the council. It's not final, but they could weigh the feedback that they get from this body and from the city council to make that determination. Then they could begin to move forward. Because as of yet, we haven't actually received any application either for site plan approval or for building permit. So there's still quite a bit of work to be done on the review side to get them moving. And that could perhaps save a couple weeks.
Maybe the most important question: where did that rocket come from, and when was it there?
I'm glad you
I
asked.
gotta know. Every time I drive fast, I tell my wife, that's
You
the
know,
coolest thing in
There's
Springville.
gotta be a story.
Just to give you some background, I bought Art City Auto Body 2 years ago,
Okay.
and I saw that rocket. I've always been a local guy here. I grew up in Spanish Fork, but I live here in Springville, and I saw that rocket. I'm like, okay, should I get rid of it or should I keep it? And after I bought Art City Auto Body, I started hearing from everybody on the phones, like, oh, you guys are the ones right by the rocket. Like, oh, you guys, like, it became a monument of Springville. So I'm like, I can't get rid of that rocket. But it actually came from Santana Raceway. Way back in the day, there was a racetrack, and that's the previous owner had picked it up from when they were demolishing the raceway. Picked it up because that's part of the automotive history and Art City history, and so he put it there. Now, since then we've repainted it. We actually we built some wings for it, some fins. We still haven't put them up yet because we're painting some murals on there to commemorate like the Santana Raceway. So we got like one of my guys is airbrushing some race tracks with the old school cars and stuff. So it's just an old artifact from
Okay, I'll not disrupt anyone, except to say, I worked at the snack shack at Santana
Oh,
Raceway
did
in
ya?
high school, flipping burgers.
Well, it's funny. A lot of people tell me it's like when they were younger, they used to paint that rocket with like
Oh, really?
when they were little kids, they would hire them to paint it with like paint rollers all the way to the top, and they changed colors all the time. But yeah, it's got kind of a fun history. Yeah.
Very cool.
After that important question, I have no more questions.
I've always wondered. Now I know.
Now you know.
We'll
Any
save the
other
blue elk for another day.
Yes.
What's that?
The blue elk? Is it elk
Oh
or
yeah, that's
deer of some
that
sort?
one I am getting rid of.
Yeah.
You guys need an elk in your yard? 'Cause we can-
No.
Send it to Denver's
We had some
airport.
last week.
We put it right next to the stallion.
Yes, there you go. I love it.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Since no one's coming forward, I move that we close the debate.
Okay.
Second,
Seconded. Oh, you got it.
Genevieve.
Pause.
No, you got it, Brett.
Oh,
We haven't
Oh, too late.
That's the one, I saw you turn,
I'll
I
be
was like,
quick.
oh, was that a fake
I'll be
out?
quick. My name's Rob Weber. My home address is 873 West, 1800 North, Pleasant Grove. I'm representing Daniel. The question on the timeline, not only with his construction loan, I'm the contractor, I'm with Barco Construction. So we're getting to crunch time. We just came out of one of the wettest winters we've ever seen, lately for a long time. We don't have very much time in between now and when we can't asphalt anymore. And so to the point of, does 4 weeks affect us? Yes. Every day moving forward from today is going to affect the construction timeline, which will then in turn start affecting his construction loan. Because if we can't get submitted and get going on the applications, sooner than later, even a couple weeks is going to start hurting us there. November is generally when you can't flat asphalt. If you want a good product, you need to be doing it sooner than that, probably a month before, so that the product sticks and holds and and everything else. And so that's where we come from on the construction aspect of it and timing. We just really need to move quickly and move forward. So that's why we tried to show a few things on the design of what we're capable of doing with the buildings. We're building the Better Body Foods project. I wish it was done because I could show pictures. It's kind of the same feel. It's here in Springville as as what Brandon has designed here. So anything's possible on the design aspect. I'll try to mitigate a little bit and try to help Daniel stay within costs, because it is a significant upgrade to do this to his building versus what we had proposed before under the CC zone. But we can make it happen, and Daniel's willing to do it. And so I think with that being said, and where he's already bought the property, it's going to be really hard to fill that to fill that space moving forward if that doesn't go, if we can't make something happen on that end. So just wanted to reiterate the importance of timing and how down to the wire we are. I mean, we've ordered the building, the building's coming, and it's going to be hard to stop if we don't decide, really quickly. And if we do stop it now, he risks cost increases, inflation, those kinds of things. So just want to stress the importance of how moving forward as quick as possible is on the construction aspect to finish this product on time. So thank you guys very much.
Mr. Arce mentioned waiting for engineering plans, and do you have those now?
100%, yeah. So we've, on my end, this is it's a commercial steel building, prefab. I know that metal buildings in general have got a bad rap. This isn't Grandpa's hay barn, even with what's been proposed. We can make these buildings look like anything you want them to anymore with the steel structure. I can put any kind of skin, those kinds of things on the outside. So we have already started the engineering on my end, which is the shell building portion and the concrete. That's already in place and it's coming. And that's the part that I say is coming now. What's going to kill us on time is we're going to go back and we're going to have to redo, Brandon Lundine's his part portion of it's going to have to be redone. Then it's going to have to be sent to civil. Civil's going to have to be redone. I mean, we're talking about months of plans that we've kind of already started down the course of. And so we've already lost that time there. I feel like with a quick answer, we can make up the time, and keep the ball moving. I can make adjustments on the structure to my portion of the building fairly quickly. And I hate to say we're at the drop dead time, but we're really, really close to where I need to make those adjustments right now. If not, the building's coming and it's ordered, and then we'll have the wrong drawings, and we'll be trying to make amendments, which is going to make it harder on the building department and and everybody that's in line there. Now, the size of the building will stay the same, and so the footprint is the same thing. It's just all the things behind the scene.
Yeah.
So,
and maybe this is a question for the designer, Brandon. I'm not sure who should answer this. Maybe it's Daniel. I don't know. Anyway, with regard to other comparable businesses and buildings, the one in Salt Lake, the one in Orem, how does the new proposed building compare to what those look like? I mean, I'm going to drive out and see the one in Orem just because I'm curious.
I'm actually not sure what the ones in Salt Lake and Orem look like. Daniel just described to me what they did there. And
Are they just more warehouse type things, or are they? Yeah.
I built the one in Orem, so I know the building very familiar with the one in Orem. It would comply more with what we proposed on the CC zone. Daniel's is actually, what we even proposed on the CC zone is a little bit nicer and fancier than what we built in Orem. It's just it looks like a warehouse.
I mean, this new proposed building is just really stepping out of the norm for such businesses. It sounds like in terms of appearance.
Yeah, and really stepping up the game, of what we've proposed to do on the outside of this. And there's cost savings things and things we can look at to try to help mitigate overspending in Daniel's case, so that we can try to keep this feasible and still make it look and meet a lot of the new ordinances that would go into the new zoning.
Yeah.
Our issue is just the use, I think, and
Correct.
the timing is what we're really, really fighting here. And so where it's a totally separate company, it's not auto body, it's a service center, but it's still Daniel Arce, and it's gonna feed a little bit off of his existing building that's there. That's where we would like to see, can we move into something a little bit quicker and approve, even if we're meeting this. And the parking, the fact of the parking and everything actually works better for him. It's nicer, it works better for the lot. So moving the building up and being able to do that actually helps us, in that regard. And fancying up the front's not it's not the end of the world. We can make it happen. It's just the timing and the use that we're really gonna be.
So the fancying of the front, is that actual brick, or is it the fake stuff like is on the old Legend motorcycles?
It's not wallpaper.
It's not
So
wallpaper.
it's gonna be probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, there's just so many different products that you can use now, to thin brick, real brick. My preference would probably be a thin brick, because then you're not stepping into another structural element, having to add footings and foundation to carry that. This isn't a real tall building, but it's still got some good height to it. And so to try to take real brick 40 feet vertically in the air isn't really that easy. So if we can do something on the outside of it that's a thin brick that's not going to fall off and peel, I actually just drove by that building to look at it. We can make it, and we can make it look, and it's masonry. You know, it's just 1.5 inches thick instead of 4. So there's lots of things that we can do on that aspect of it.
Go back to that picture.
The elevation?
Yeah,
The front,
no,
You're going to have to do that.
The
before we
elevation,
can hammer
yeah.
it better down.
So, and with this, we have some columns, we have some corbelling, which is different thicknesses, and that can all be done with, we can use a traditional brick and cut it, and then add like steps up towards the top. We have some corbelling that goes there. We're trying to, like Rob said, we just got done finishing Better Body Foods, and it's under construction, and it's going to be all brick along the front of it as well. And it's going to be very similar to Strap Tank. I think it's the same mason too.
It's a similar mason. We took the designs based off of Rick Salisbury's Strap Tank. Kind of tamed it down just a little bit so that it's a little bit more uniform. But yeah, it's going to be old style, brick masonry, and we can accomplish the same thing, on this building. However,
so your site plan ready? Like you're ready to submit a site plan? No?
it'd be preliminary, right, Brand? I
Yeah,
mean, it would be essentially now it would be a preliminary
I
site
drew
plan.
this morning, so it would have to go to the civil engineer, and it'd have to be worked through. I mean, he's already started and done a lot of legwork on the previous site plan we had done here, and we just got to modify that, modify the drainage, and like I said, make a site plan application and get it turned in. And that could happen in a matter of a couple probably week, 2 weeks max.
Yeah, and
A week or 2 weeks?
If we can.
yes, and we've decided, and Daniel's made the decision, and we obviously can adjust from this, but we've kept the plumbing, the HVAC, the mechanical, all that stuff,
Stays the same.
electrical, it all stays the same. It's all in the same uniform, inside the building. So we're still moving forward on that, with the risk of knowing this could, potentially not work. And so we've made the decision to keep moving forward on that, hoping that we can come to some kind of agreement so that doesn't kill us in time-wise either. Because, every time somebody touches it, it's a month. And it gets really hard to finish the project on time. So,
But I think as Daniel stated though too, there's a need. This is a business that there's only one in Salt Lake, one in Orem right now. And there's so much growth coming down here, Spanish Fork. I mean, that's where all of our work is right now, in South. He's got a great business, going to be right into the city, collecting tax revenue, bringing in, cars from other dealerships outside this city and bring them here to get those things that need to be taken care of done. I think it's a great service for him. He's dedicated. He's here. He's invested in this space. He's already invested in the ground. And I think with what he does with his car shows, and we've talked about maybe doing a mural or some murals on the back of this, kind of like they did at the, I don't remember the big manufacturing business out there. But do some murals to fit in the theme of that art city. He wants to fit in that.
And like Big D Construction does that.
yeah, really similar. We could
Yeah.
provide something on the, we could provide places on the building for that to, happen, and it would be, it'd be really neat.
More art city
Mhm.
driven.
Mhm.
Hey, Josh, what, the south side of the building, what road does that butt up against?
It
That's up
doesn't.
against a vacant lot.
It's Hamilton Electric, actually,
Okay.
where they have all those like
So
street
what,
light
what,
poles.
approximately what south is that?
It's just before 700 South.
So just before 700, so
Like
there's
700 South is
so there's
all
basically
around.
another block to
Before-
8th South, before
Well,
we hit 8th South, right?
Pretty
There's
visible.
actually there's Hamilton and a couple little buildings, and then 7th South.
Have to go over
Yeah,
But pretty visible as you drive. into
Yeah.
town.
from.
yeah.
From the south, either 89 or 51.
Yep, it's right as that.
I mean, I can show you. I can pull up Street View and show you if you'd like me to show.
I know I can drive over there later and have a gander.
Daniel and I kind of discussed this. I'm not, on that with the south side and this north side. Brandon's obviously got the whole north side of this elevation, done all fancy and done up.
Which is great.
Another thing that would be very, very possible and really cost effective is if we did a certain portion of the north and a certain portion of the south, to where what you really see coming down the road, and the west side, if we could wrap the corners into a portion of that and make that, really stand out, that's really very doable at this point right now. So we have lots of options on the design side. We just need to be.
Yeah, so what is the current, or maybe you haven't drawn it up yet, Brandon? What's the current plan for the south elevation?
I haven't come up with anything. This took me all night last night to come up with.
So
I left- I
it
left
wouldn't be similar to the west and the north?
It could be, but like I said, I left it kind of open because they seem to like the murals they've done on, what's the
So that's where you're
what's
talking
the
about.
business they had,
murals,
the
of
big
course.
brick business down here? Yeah,
Yeah, Weebtronics.
something like that. We
They
thought
have
about, that
murals
might be
in
kind of cool downtown. Maybe pay homage to Santana. I mean, that's a part of history of this area, and
Yeah,
do a mural for that there, and maybe
Yeah, yeah.
do multiple ones there.
The-
Basically have it like a blank wall that
Yeah.
they could,
Something.
I think so.
Yeah, and the
Sure,
current building that was proposed under the CC is insulated metal panel. You know, it's a nice stucco embossed insulated metal panel. You stand 10 feet away from it. It looks like like a stuccoed wall or even a
Standing or a
tilt.
pre-engineered
You know,
deal.
yeah, a tilt building kind of wall, and so we can do, and they're a flat panel, easy to work with, kind of a thing. But we can create parapets up and down, the sides of those with that same paneling, and use the masonry on the maybe the front third and the west side of that, and
Could
maybe
make a-
mural space on both
Could
sides.
make a really nice canvas for somebody.
Yeah.
Josh, is that kind of paneling allowed in the MSSG?
It's not currently, no. It doesn't specifically prohibit a number of materials, but it specifically lists permitted materials. And there isn't like an architectural metal cladding or an ACM panel that's permitted up to a certain percentage. But there are provisions for party walls and side elevations in terms of percentage of other materials like synthetic stucco or metal paneling, those type of things.
The insulated metal panel, just so everybody's knowledge, it's architecture. It's an architectural panel that we can get in any kind of rib too. It doesn't have to be flat. We can get it in, anything, a corrugated look, or we can do it horizontally. We can run it any way you want. So it's not it's similar to an architectural panel that, with cladding and those kinds of things. It's just insulated at the same time. So lots of options on the build part.
So when you're saying you could wrap sorry to keep on this piece, but wrap the north and the south to make it look a little better, what did you mean by that? Just for example.
I wish I would have brought plans with me, but do you mind if I come up and show you?
Yeah.
So this is the rendering of the wet body for this building that's happening right now. This building, keep in mind, it's 600 feet long, so it's a really, really big building, but we have the whole west
So
side.
you just wrap the
Yeah.
first third
So
of it
you'd
or
wrap-
whatever.
Yeah, whatever we would need to do, we'd wrap that first third, make that match the west, the west elevation of it. And then from there, we would run the paneling, the architectural metal paneling, we would run it back, to the back.
Yeah.
The benefit of that is the cost savings, and the time, the maintenance, those kinds of things. It's just a really good product to close in a shell of a building and be really, really cost effective, as well as, it's very efficient. So it meets all the comm checks, and it helps with all the stuff on the comm check side of it, so.
So on that example you just showed us, is it stucco the rest of the way back?
It's a stucco embossed panel is what they call that particular one that's going on that building. So it looks like a big flat wall. I mean, it's got every 40 inches or 42 inches, you can see a small vertical seam where they go together. But it looks like a great big flat wall. It's a lot nicer than stucco.
We also broke that wall up so it wasn't all one continuous plane. We also broke it up with like 20-foot ribbed pieces in there as well.
Yeah, which is the same thing. That would be in Daniel's case, that would be very easy to do. We could go every 50 feet and stick another pop out that creates the parapet. On Better Body's case, they're gonna brick the whole thing. All of their anything that pop outs and goes up and has a parapet will be brick. So there's just lots and lots of design options. Once we get to that point.
And Josh, what's Jefferson School address? Or that old, is it right here?
750.
So this is 8th right here.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm good. I'm much better now on the location of the new building. Okay?
Like I said, I think the key items to take away from this is we have lots of options what we can do with the building to make it conform. We are in a little bit of a time crunch, but I think the biggest thing is, like I said, let's not just throw automotive underneath a blanket it's not a fair blanket. Because this is a high-tech deal. This is the future. All of our cars are gonna need this eventually, so might as well have one of the best tech centers in the state here.
The real sticking point is the use.
Right.
You can maneuver around other things, but not around the use, because that's the essence of what the building will be.
Correct. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Any other questions before,
We vote on the motion?
well,
I never
we're
did.
still in the, yeah, we have a motion on the table that we haven't voted on yet. Just
The
check
public
in.
hearing?
We don't have to move again. We can move it.
Yeah, because we didn't vote yet.
Do we need to close the public hearing before?
We have the
a
motion on the
discussion?
table. I'm just watching.
Yeah.
Looks like is there anybody else who's wanting to come forward before we vote on the motion?
I'll get it. Oh, was that a fake out? Okay.
Yeah, that's fake. He's staying back there where it's safe. Okay. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. The public hearing is now closed for item number 3. Discussion amongst commissioners on this item.
So I have a question. I probably need to spend more time looking at the reframing plans of downtown and considering, yeah, when you drive in, like you were saying, it's a very visible area. But, you know, will this harm our objective?
Yeah,
For-
that's the real question.
That's the real question.
I
we need to
think
ask.
There are
Aesthetics.
multiple objectives of which aesthetics is part of it. And there's also the idea of having businesses in the area that are encouraging walking
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
staying,
that's the
like,
thing I was
you know,
thinking.
bringing people to experience downtown.
Yeah.
That's the idea of the downtown zone.
So, I mean, as part of that, so we have that little, you know, the convergence of the road from, I can't remember what the 2 roads are called, but from Mapleton and Spanish Fork, right there.
The split.
Yeah, the split. We'll call it a confluence of roads. How walkable is that gonna be long-term right there?
Being at the
Not-
south end of.
The south end, and unless they put in a crosswalk somehow when they redesign that.
Or a bridge? Yes,
confluence.
please.
A key element of this, of the reframing downtown plan recommendations is actually to replace that whole interchange with a roundabout at 7th. So that we can reconnect 7th across South Main, get rid of the flyover, and make it feel less like you're getting on a freeway than you're coming into downtown Springville. So it would slow traffic down and get rid of the concrete barrier up the middle, and make it. I always feel like when I'm driving south, I get anxious if I get to 4th and I'm in the wrong lane, because I feel like if I'm in the wrong lane, I'm getting flushed down the toilet and I can't decide where to go. So we really want to change the character of that. Obviously, that's in a different time frame than Art City is working in. But that UDOT has it in their kind of mid-range plan
No,
that
but I
needs to be replaced.
I appreciate you saying that, because that's the purpose of my question, is to say, will this impact the long-term plans in a negative way? And, I know that's the core question, of this whole
Yeah.
thing. And if it does, then I have issue. If it doesn't, then I look at it and go, you know,
But Josh, is one of those
really
things,
care.
no automotive, is that? Sorry, is one of those items in that planning, no automotive in that area? Like, I feel like I heard that as a permit.
Well, in the Main Street South Gateway zone, there isn't any auto repair, gas station, service station, minor auto repair. The only auto-related use permitted would be a parts store. And actually, a number of years ago, what would you call it? Kind of preemptively, we took some of those out of the CC zone, because there was actually a desire, and Troy could share an anecdote about sitting down with the owner or the buyer of the Allens Block to facilitate a meeting with a gas station convenience store for that corner. And it didn't happen. He kind of waved the guy off, saying this is not what we're looking for here. But a number of years ago, that preemptive change was made to the CC even to prevent those type of vehicle-focused uses in the area. So I don't know that the reframing downtown plan itself says no auto-related uses. It says, lean into Art City, tune out through, make it an 18-hour vibrant place, all of those type of elements. And I think there were some interesting arguments made about, at least in terms of the leading into Art City, that I think there's an argument to be made there about craft, not just fine arts or performing arts, but somebody building a guitar, or somebody putting a fender on an English wheel. I don't know how they do it. I think it's just as artistic as painting.
Would, like, say, minor auto repair cover this kind of use?
Most likely. The catch is I really wouldn't want to open it up broadly. Even with design standards, I wouldn't want to see a proliferation of those uses. So
it'd have to be an exception for this.
if it was something that the Planning Commission felt inclined to accommodate in this specific case, I think there are multiple ways that we could be very specific with it, so that we just didn't create an entitlement for any type of these additional of these uses in the area.
It's close to public transportation. And I think that's a benefit, to auto repair, because somebody doesn't have a car.
Where's the public transit?
The bus stop up at Walgreens. And also on 4th, that's a reasonable walk, public transportation wise. So if like someone were dropping off their car, they wouldn't necessarily have to have another car pick them up, or that's a possibility, which I think that's a good space for it. And I don't know, like, other places along the bus route that would lean itself to that. And there's also, like, we have the garage, and even though Legends is, who knows what that is, it's got the aesthetic of a auto kind of repair place. So, like, aesthetically, I think that it fits within, the idea of Springville. I mean, we used to have a car dealership, didn't we? Like where Allen's is or something? It used to be.
If it's under the design standards and requirements of the proposed zone.
Yeah.
Under the old zone or the current zone, those standards are very
Yeah.
visually different.
That's right. And that's like I don't have an issue with the use. I know it's not really like promoting walkability kind of a thing, but if it's within the design standards and it's up to the street, it kind of creates that aesthetic, then I think that that's in keeping with the spirit of Main Street. That's how I'm feeling about it. So I would be inclined to accommodate that use in this instance if they were to abide by the design standards of the.
The key message there is in this instance.
Yeah.
So it doesn't proliferate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I tend to agree with you too. There's not just like a corner cafe right on that northwest corner, just a little outdoor place.
Like strap changes.
Josh, if we were to continue this, would it be reasonable for staff to be able to come back at our next meeting with recommendations of what we could do with this property?
Sure. It depends on how long it takes me to address a guidance that I get next week from the council.
Well, let's talk about the timing for just a minute. I mean, if we're going to consider, if we're seriously going to consider allowing them to go through this project, I mean, and I'm not saying we are, I'm just saying if we were, then I think what they've indicated is the timing is crucial here. So what I'm wondering is if we made a recommendation to the city council that they go ahead and allow the zone to take place, the change in the zone, with the exception of allowing our city auto body to be considered an exception. I'm suggesting that if the timing is so crucial, in other words, if we simply continue it here, and then the city council talks about it next week, and then it comes back to us the following week, and we go ahead and approve whatever the city council recommends, and then it goes back to the city council. We're talking about May, 4 weeks from today.
Well, because are you
And
saying
like-
you
In
want to do
fact,
it at a
further
work
than-
session
More than
with the
4
city
weeks,
council?
because we're talking about a couple of weeks there in May. Well, I guess it's exactly 4 weeks, isn't it? But my point is, I'm wondering if we shouldn't make a recommendation to the city council that they can seriously consider it, so that if they decide next week after they've discussed it for a period of time that they can go ahead and approve it, then it's a 2-week window instead of a 4-week window.
Well, they won't make a decision next week, though, in a work
No.
session.
No, it'd just
Well,
be.
but
guidance and
when's the
feedback.
next city council meeting?
Would be the first Tuesday, the next available agenda would be the first Tuesday in May.
For them to take their action.
Aren't they meeting next week?
It's a work session.
Right, that agenda's already, final and out.
So what you're telling me is that there's no way that this thing is gonna be approved until May.
That would be at the soonest, is if you acted on it at the 24th, the meeting is at the 24th,
Of this month, yeah.
Something like that.
If we put a recommendation forward.
then typically, that doesn't go to the immediate next city council, because we need time to compile staff reports and publications, so it would go to the, third week in May to council for action. If you did make a recommendation tonight, to the council to approve with, however you'd like to describe, I don't have a specific strategy to propose to you, but if your motion was sufficiently clear as to what you wanted to accomplish, that I could craft a proposal to the council to accomplish that, they could potentially act on that recommendation on that first Tuesday meeting in May. So it would be a 2-week savings, and depending on what the result of the discussion is next week, as I mentioned, if the applicant felt confident in the outcome of that meeting, they could proceed with the site civil drawings needed to submit for site planning. So that's the first thing they need to do. And then once they receive site plan approval, they can apply for a building permit. So finishing the rest of the redesign and the engineering on the building is second in terms of order to getting the site plan ready for submittal. And they could start that if they decided to undertake that based on how they feel about the council's feedback next week. They could start on that as soon as next week, so that there wouldn't be as much of a lag after whatever the date of adoption is.
Okay.
I would
Oh,
like to see us craft a proposal that we could send to the city council.
So before we do that, I think there are 2 questions that we need to get a feel for on the commission. The first being, this proposal covers a lot other than this.
Yeah.
A lot of other. So does the commission feel like this proposal, with the exception of this property, is one we want to go forward?
Sure.
Is there anybody who wouldn't want it to go forward on the other properties?
No, not me.
A continued discussion.
For,
Wait, not a continue.
I'm fine with the continuance for the other property. So I'm gonna jump off strategy for just a second. I know, at least for me, 99% of the time, strategy is king. But in this situation, I mean, there's been a lot of effort and good faith put into getting this thing ready. And I think we need, I would like to take that into consideration.
well, that's the
So I
second
think it's-
question.
That's the second
Yeah.
question.
Which is, the first question is not a continuance, but can we give a positive recommendation for going forward on exploring this for the other properties? And if that is something that we're all interested in, then we want to include that in our motion. The second question being, do we feel that this particular project is one that is in line with the vision and the plan for the area enough that we want to see what the options are to allow this to go forward in a way that is conducive to the area?
Yeah. And on the first question, on the move to amend the zone map to the MSSG, I think that that is something that we should go forward with. I think that, recommend that the city council do that. I think that will allow the city to better regulate our southern entrance, our southern gateway, and help also make it clear for any other businesses that what they can plan for in the future. Because I think that's part of, you know, this issue with Art City Auto Body, that they were planning for a future that changed or would change if this was approved. And if we can get this set for other businesses, then that will help them plan for their futures, knowing what's coming. And then on the second question,
Yeah, me too.
the second question, I think that this is in keeping with the aesthetics feel of Springville, and I think is beneficial, though it is not, you know, necessarily a walkable thing that was envisioned. I think that it's a positive thing, but it would need to be crafted to limit, so it wasn't just all the way.
Right. Keeping in place pretty much everything. Yeah, it'd just be allowing the use,
Yeah, the
More or
use.
but keeping everything else.
And
Keeping
so
everything
if this is the direction we go, is it possible to put, what do we do in the central Westfield, whatever it's called, right down here?
The Meadowbrook area?
Like an overlay?
Yeah, no, a design standard, there we go, design standard that would be required in this.
Well, the Main Street South Gateway Zone does have extensive
Already
design
has it.
standards. That's what
And-
this was
and
designed
meets
to.
it. Okay, good.
Correct.
I missed that.
Could this be allowed under like a development plan?
A development agreement?
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean, sorry, yeah.
There are a number of ways that it could be done. An example of how we handled this very specific concern in the original adoption of the Main Street South Gateway Zone. The property owner on the Allens block, or Block 5, was concerned about preserving the ability to use that existing drive-through on the old Burger King. So we specifically put into the code a provision that any drive-through that existed as of the date of this ordinance enactment could continue to be used to a certain calendar date. And so there's a number of different ways we could handle it in code to allow this specific use, this specific proposal to advance while limiting the opportunity for others. And if you convey that, if you decide to convey that in a motion, I would focus more on what you want to see as the outcome, and then so that whatever strategy we take to the council, they'll see that as reflective of your intent and not feel like they need to send it back to you for additional consideration.
Do you have any concerns with this essentially moving forward as if the zone change happened, but allowing it to go in?
It's obviously, I think from my presentation, not the first use I would pick if I had to pick of all the uses, but I think this represents a reasonable balance of the investment-backed expectations of the property owner and the intent of the city. Sometimes I take the long view, and if in 20, 30, 40, 50 years this area is just so hopping that some big restaurant is like, I gotta have a space, and hopefully Daniel's retired by then.
40 years he should be.
Oh, he seems young.
That just like I look at Bodie's today and say, wouldn't that be a great adaptive use? This is a big open metal building. I mean, that White Willow not White Willow, that's the old mansion. There's the old Fields Welding shop in Provo on 3rd West and 5th South that people have receptions in. Or
Oh, yeah.
it's a flexible enough building, and if it was designed attractively on the outside, you could put a big restaurant or a reception center or a museum or a concert venue in there. And it's a very adaptable building into the future. So in the long view, I think it's a a balancing of interests that is an acceptable outcome.
Okay. I think it's safe to say that we respect what has gone on prior
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
this, and I think that's probably something that's weighing on the decision.
Yeah.
There was a good faith effort that was made. Who wants to take a stab at a very convoluted motion?
Genevieve does.
You don't want me to. I ramble.
Oh, do you want me to take a stab at it? I haven't made a motion in a while.
Yeah, just focus
get
on
to
what
make
you
the
want to have us accomplish.
Why can't we just use the recommended motion that we have
And add
and
to it.
just say with the exception of
Yeah.
this property being allowed to be considered?
That's a little bit of a hybrid in the sense that we talked about moving to recommend approval to the other properties rather than a continuance on the other properties.
You can just change
We move to recommend.
approval.
Recommend approval.
Recommend approval of the request to amend
Do we, which parcel number is this? Do you have any idea? Or is it on the? It's not on this.
Oi.
Those are the last numbers?
Which ones?
I said,
26? There's a,
Oh, there it is. And the 34, or the 26, 30, 113? Okay,
That's correct.
26, 30, 113, okay. And those
And
would
if
be
you say the proposed Art City auto body,
place,
yeah, I think we're all in the, you feel free to use the parcel number as well.
okay. All right, and keeping in mind that there is the option for discussion on the motion, so we can continue to amend it if we need to. I would move to approve Springville Community Development's request to amend the official zone map, be amended from Community Commercial CC Zone to the Main Street South and Gateway Zone, MSSG, for parcels generally located along Main Street from 400 South to 800 South, zone as listed in the staff report, with the exception of parcels 26, 030, 0112, and 113 associated with Art City Auto Body. And to recommend continuance of these parcels pending council action.
no,
Is that about right?
no, we're not wanting to continue.
I don't think we
We're
would.
wanting to have
Or
them
recommend
consider,
approval.
we want to have them consider options to allow the recommended
Which
use.
means that they can't be part of the approved because they have to still be.
We can recommend that they approve it, and as part of that approval, include provisions to allow that use on those parcels. But if we continue it, then that pushes it. So it has to come back to us
Okay.
again.
But aren't you continuing all of those with the exception of those two?
No, they're all.
No, if we,
said
if,
Approve
if,
it.
if we
Recommend
were to approve all the other parcels, but continue those two parcels, then that is the same as continuing the entire thing,
Correct.
because it pushes everything out.
Well, this is
So we have
fine
to-
to the city council anyway, so.
Right,
It is.
Yeah, but
So-
we're
wanna
recommending
get
the
approval
wording
for the
right,
whole
we wanna
thing.
get
We don't need a continuance. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
All right, then we would take out from the motion the exception and instead refer to those properties as the planning commission would like to see something happen with
Further
them.
consideration.
Consideration with those properties to allow for the proposed use to go forward while still maintaining the standards of the zone change.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll
All
second
right.
that.
All right, we have a convoluted motion
I
and a
second it,
straight
yeah.
up second.
Can I restate that just
Oh,
so
yes.
we make sure we're on the same
Absolutely.
page? Just
As my favorite thing.
So
Read it.
you're recommending that to the city council to approve the zone map amendment for the whole area as noticed in these parcel numbers, with the condition that we find a way to permit the proposed use and development of this Art City Auto Body Technical Facility.
Exactly.
Is that
More or less.
okay?
That's what I seconded.
So adopt the zone on the whole place. Let this
That's
happen
the
somehow.
sentiment I seconded.
Okay.
Right. Yep, we have motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion, whatever it is, passes.
You can breathe again, Daniel, I think.
Okay, that concludes the agenda for tonight. Do we have any information from community development prior to adjourning?
Nothing specific tonight. I already told you about the North Main Street grant, right?
What?
So we got a grant from MAG to do a plan for the north part of Main Street,
So excited about that.
the other really great stretch where I live.
Yeah.
Is that-
When,
400 north to the north boundary, basically it's about a $90,000 project, and we have like a 5% match or a 10% match,
and when are we gonna be able to start on that?
beginning of the fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so would that at any point in time mean that buildings should have a name on them? We have that giant building on Main Street, North Main Street. You never know what it is.
Are you concerned?
It's anonymous.
Oh, that was the springs?
That was the bottling company where
Yeah,
Park
it used to
Rocher was.
It used to be a water park, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Used to
Park
be like a
Rocher.
water park. Yeah, Park Rocher, yeah.
What was it?
Yeah, Park
A
Rocher.
skating rink and a swimming pool, and well, the skating rink's actually still there. It's the frame shop is to the south. That's the old skating rink. But yeah, I guess the
Yeah.
pool was there and
Yeah.
some soggy football field or something behind it.
I don't know about the soggy football field, but
Well, that's called community park.
That used to be the football. For about 10 years, that was that's the Springville High played football
oh,
game.
that's
But
so
But
true.
we are getting a bike park while that continues to be a soggy.
Yeah, yeah, we are getting bike parked. Is the bike park going to still be there after the runoff happens?
There's like,
That's the big
can we
question.
discuss
I know
this
one-
after
one of
we
the
close the
houses
meeting?
is not faring too well.
Okay.
What conversations?
Oh,
We are preparing and have prepared and have done a lot of work, and I feel not worried and calm. We can't say that nothing bad will happen.
Kind of like everybody thought before Angie Hell's place flooded a couple of weeks ago. Up by the bike park. One of those.
Oh well, yeah, that
One
was.
of the houses that lined up against there.
Yeah, that
Big
was.
rainstorm pouring in through our basement windows.
So our lot
And-
behind
and-
our house, which borders the creek, so it's up, you know, where Jeremy Higgins
Mhm, yeah.
is back there. It looks like people have been sawing. I've been out of the country for 10 weeks, so, but it's a mess back there. Like, there's so much dead.
Yeah, we sent out 2 letters to all property owners who abut the creek, asking them to remove any debris, dead trees, even younger kind of. When the creek reduces in volume, we tend to get growth into that side of the creek bed,
Yeah.
and then when we get big flow, it will uproot and take out all of that new growth. And so people have been working to clean up and remove.
They haven't removed yet. It's like,
So wherever it abuts private property,
it's like, doesn't the city own, and I know we're all supposed to clean up our own stuff, but isn't that really city, like, so many feet out from the creek?
where we don't have adjoining property that we own, we do have an easement, but all through kind of that Hunters Valley area, we're working on Hobble Creek Park. We've actually ordered a bunch of Jersey barriers or K-rails to put there and cleaning up that part of the creek. We're working in Bartholomew still, and then all the way up to the debris basin where we have frontage on the creek.
But the
Don't-
property owners own right up to the creek.
Yeah, you actually own to the middle of the
But
creek.
there is an easement, so that you can get.
but with the
along
debris basin in Bartholomew,
the north
are
side.
they not enough to mitigate flooding?
They are
Or-
not flood control devices. They are debris. So Bartholomew just holds water for the irrigation system.
Oh,
The debris
not
basin,
going
no, the debris basin is not to hold water. It's to allow the water to slow down and drop all of the trees and other kind of debris that come out of the canyon. It's already flowing through the overflow pipes.
so there's no,
No, there's no
Flood
additional
mitigation.
capacity, no.
ooh.
But we,
It was.
if you go to the Springville webpage, there's on the top row, there's a creek flow box you can click on it. Down at the bottom of that, there are links to 2 pages. The first is the creek gauge at basically 1650, 1500 west, the railroad bridge. When that hits 650 to 700, we start to get a little anxious. We basically start deploying in the anticipation that the creek could water could come out of the banks. But there is a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration site that's linked to that gives us essentially like a 10-day forecast of creek flow based on temperature, forecasted temperature and precipitation, and it's basically goes up to today, and then everything in the past has a line for projected or for modeled and for actual, and the model is held up to actual where you almost can't even tell the difference between the lines.
Okay.
And that tells us that at least for the next 10 days, we're not going to exceed 300 cubic feet per second, which is well below the level that the creek can comfortably handle. So we will have, unless some freak storm shows up and dumps a whole bunch of water and brings down a lot of snow, the current projection shows that we'll have plenty of time to anticipate a rise in creek level. This is not an earthquake kind of situation where we can't see it coming. So we're seeing into next week, and everything's completely manageable, and we hope it will stay that way.
I was down at we were down putting in sandbags at the high school, there by the old swimming pool. And several of the people there are fairly new to the community, and so they said, well, how long have you lived in Springville? I said, well, let's see, about 65 years, and other than the little time that I was in Los Angeles. But I said, she said, well, what do I do with these sandbags after, when this is all over? And I said, when is it all over? And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, in 1982, we had a
Yeah.
huge snowfall, and we didn't have a flood. I said, in
But it was
1983, we had a flood because we had the same size of snowfall again. So
Yeah.
what you want to do is probably leave them in place until after next year at least. And I said, other than that, you could take it to the Bartholomew beach and dump it there, I guess.
Actually, there's very specific protocols for dealing, especially if they've been exposed to floodwaters, for dealing with used sandbags, and that information will all get out as we move forward. The real catch in 83, and we have all the graphs to show it, Brad Stapley, our public works director, actually had a great presentation. We had a lot of snow. It was a big snow year, but it also stayed cold. And so the water stayed up, and we actually had, Craig Norman mentioned, we had 16 inches of snow on the golf course in May.
Oh,
And that was kind of in the middle of as the water was coming down, and then it was 80 degrees, and everything just came down fast because there was still a lot of water up there. And so we're actually in a really good place right now where we're past the peak, we're starting to lose water, it's coming down at a reasonable rate.
You just don't know what's going to happen next year.
Right. So if it keeps coming down at this kind of rate, we're good, and
Yeah.
other than your long-term kind of meteorological predictions, there really isn't, or soil saturation, a lot that this year may impact next year. There's so many variables.
and there won't be flooding near the freeway like we've seen in past
No.
years?
No muskrats coming up, or?
Yeah, not anticipated.
I mean, there's so much water around that we just have water pooling everywhere from precipitation. I mean, if you look at the clover leaf, that's not clover leaf anymore, the
Wetlands right next to
if you get off at 1400 North, there's water in between the off ramps and the main line of the freeway. There's water all out around the transfer station. If you go down 4 South, there's just a lot of groundwater sitting around. Luckily, there's not water sitting in the future retention pond at Westfield Central, which makes us very happy. But
So that's not flooding.
that's just accumulation of
accumulation.
high groundwater and runoff. It's not river flooding resulting from runoff.
Oh, okay.
So we had an emergency operations center meeting today to talk about what thresholds we would use to establish a 24/7 emergency operations. We all brought our phones down and plugged them in to make sure they worked down here in our multipurpose room. And there's been a lot of effort, and if you go watch some of the podcasts that have been done lately, there's been one at the end of last week from Brad Stapley, our public works director, and then Patrick Money did one yesterday that really detail all the preparations we've done and what we recommend citizens do.
That's great.
Except for the bike park is cut away.
Erosion control. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Seconded. Oh.
All in favor?
Aye.
He is adjourned.